KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger, a public affairs program featuring stories from all over the Central Valley with Sevag Tetiosian, 90.7 KFSR.
I'm your host, Sevag Tetiosian. Welcome to the beautiful downtown Fresno studios of the Community Media Access Collaborative Fresno Clovis. Our guest this week is Rob Boese. He is in the commercial real estate business. Welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Did I get your title right? Because you do a lot of things in real estate.
Right. So in addition to, running the company and being the president and the broker of a real estate company, we do investment sales, we do property management, and we do commercial leasing. And that includes a couple of little things in between. We do real estate accounting, we manage projects, including some special projects. There isn't really anything that we do that we don't do under commercial real estate. So, all different types of projects.
The reason why I invited you on this program is because I was interested in knowing why you selected downtown Fresno, and I started looking into the company a little bit on your website, and then I read an article about how you started in this business. So before we get to the reason why you moved to downtown Fresno, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sure. I'm originally from New York, and I got into commercial real estate, probably when I was early teens. My father was a doctor, and he had met my mother during the Vietnam War. She was a nurse, and they had gotten married in Hong Kong and moved back. My father was from Brooklyn, so they moved back to New York, and my father's practice grew, and he moved to Long Island, and he ended up buying a commercial building, which he leased out to other doctors, and my mother became the property manager for that building, and she actually had a really good pension for it. And they acquired more buildings and more tenants, and eventually she started having me help her on those projects. And for some reason I had a brother and a sister, and they got off the hook, and she thought I would be good for it. And as a young person, it's not really the dream job, right? It's not. There's a lot of accounting, there's a lot of paperwork, and a lot of people don't know that about commercial real estate. Most of it's in numbers. And medical tenants are some of the most prickly tenants. If you've ever dealt with a doctor or people in the medical field before, they're very demanding. So it was a really good place for me to start. But like I said, it wasn't really my dream start. And so my parents acquired a number of properties. We had a good portfolio. I lost my parents in separate years to cancer, and so I became the executor of our estate. And like I said, I had a brother and sister, and we made the decision. My brother and sister and myself were young people, and we wanted to do other things, and so we sold those properties, and that was my first investment sales. And I moved to New York City, and I did real estate in New York, and which is a very exciting job for a young person. And the numbers are really big, and you meet all these really exciting, famous people, or these movers and shakers. And at one time, I was leasing $10,000, $20,000 a month apartments to.
Wow! And I want to stop you there. And in this conversation, I'm going to interrupt because you're going to say something to trigger something. And so, when you're leasing that amount of volume, is there a cut? I mean, is there a significant cut to you, or is it some nominal price? And the reason why I ask is because we may have listeners who say, you know what, I've always wondered what the numbers are for commercial real estate.
Sure. And, commercial real estate is a really exciting field, and it's very complicated, right? I think, no disrespect to residential at all, but at that time, I was doing what you consider residential. And there was, brokers involved on both sides, and a lot of other parties. And so, we're talking about really big numbers. And the trickle down to somebody like me, sort of in an entry-level job, doing the groundwork on leasing, it was a couple $1,000s, per lease. It's not really, you're not really making tens of thousands per lease on those things. But living in New York is extremely expensive. And what I found was, doing these really big transactions, because, for your Fresnans, that might sound like a lot of money. In New York, that's, pretty much par for the course. And so if you're making, $50, $60, $100,000, there's a good chance you're spending $50, $60, $100,000 on rent and other things. So it was fun. You know, I made a little bit of money. I learned a lot. And the one thing I did learn is that I missed commercial a lot, right? I missed office. I missed the tenants as prickly as I remember them being. I missed the complexity. I missed the numbers aspect of it. It was something I always wanted to get back into. And it was around that time, 2009, where things in New York really took a turn for the worse. Like everywhere else in the country, you know, we had a really big recession. And people's appetite for $10,000, $20,000 apartments really dried up, and no one was doing anything. And it was around that time I had met my future wife, and so my girlfriend at this time, and she was from Fresno. And you know, she said, when I met her, she said, Rob, you know, I always wanted to move back to Fresno, right? And I laughed at her. Nobody moves from New York
to Fresno.
And so I kind of brushed it aside. And then late in 2009, having not done any real estate transactions for months and months, which in New York is a very painful thing because your bills still...
Your bills are, I mean, so what that sounds like is money going out, but no money coming in to replenish the pot.
Exactly. So I think I was paying about, you know, somewhere between $2,000 and $2,500 in rent for a shoebox in New York City, which for a young person, again, is a great thing if you have the money to do it. And so Fresno started sounding really good to me at that point. And I didn't know that much about it. I knew it was in California. I knew it was someplace that people didn't really romanticize about going to. It had a little bit of a negative reputation. Why would you go to Fresno type of thing? But I thought, you know, California, sunshine, Hollywood, here I come, right? And so, you know, in October 2009, we arrived here, and I realized that it was much different than, you know, I had imagined, or, you know, and it wasn't as bad as people had made it out to be either. I found there was a lot of good people here, and there was a lot of people struggling in 2009, including myself. You know, at that point, I arrived to Fresno with about $900 in my pocket. But, you know, I had this redhead with me, and she was from Fresno, so I figured, you know, I got $900, I've got this, you know, beautiful girlfriend, you know, everything will be okay. So it took me a long time to get my feet under the table in Fresno, like a lot of people. It was different than New York. It was much slower paced. The recession had hit, you know, nobody was hiring. It took me a long time to find a job. And so I had this experience in commercial real estate, some residential, property management, all of which I enjoyed. And so I went knocking at the big companies. And I went to Colliers, and I met Charles Tingey, who is a very dynamic person and, you know, really respected in this town. And, you know, he told me at the time, and he said, Rob, you know, you're the right fit for a company. Like, are you clean cut? You went to a good college. You know, I attended Johns Hopkins, and, you know, you're really well spoken. The economy's terrible. I can give you a desk and a phone and, you know, some cards after you get your real estate license in California, but no one will call you because nobody's calling our guys. It's just an awful time. And he gave me the advice, go work for a developer, go work for a property management company, wait for the economy to turn around. So I took his advice, and that's what I did. So I worked some odd jobs, and I ended up working for Granville Homes, and I worked for the Assimi family. And I worked for Darius Assimi directly, which is a very good opportunity. He knows, you know, the town extremely well. He had started doing his downtown projects. Obviously, he's known for, you know, his housing tracts and a lot of big projects, including his other work around town, and including, you know, being, you know, politically active. And he really showed me the ropes, and it was an invaluable experience. But I also had the itch to do commercial real estate, so I switched gears, and I worked for Manco Abbott here in town doing commercial property management for about 2.5 years. And the opportunity came up for me to start my own business. And that really started when that company had lost a client, and they turned around and said, you know, a number of you, unfortunately, we're going to have to eliminate your positions, which...
So I mean, I think it's so interesting that, you know, times get tough in New York, economy tanks, you're doing well, and then things get tough. You come to Fresno, you start climbing again, and then, oh, they take the legs from under you. So
you know,
what happened next?
I think that's a story of a lot of people. It's never a straight line. And especially in real estate, it's not like being a lawyer or a doctor, and, you know, that you go to a graduate school and then you do an internship or something like that, and there's natural progression. Real estate is much more organic, and it's really what you make of it. And, so the client that they had lost, she had offered me an opportunity a couple of months later to start my own company, with her being my first client. And that had worked out really great for me. It was nerve-wracking at first, because it came with 220 tenants. And, at that time, I didn't have any money in the bank. I had a cell phone. I had a really beat-up car. I'd just gotten married at that point. And, when she came to me and asked me if I want to do it, of course I said, yeah, I want to do it, right? It's a terrific opportunity. And, they really said to me, Rob, listen, talk to your wife and make sure that this is something that she's okay with and you're okay with. Think about it carefully, because, in addition to your 220 tenants, your 34 commercial properties, it's just you. You'll take all the calls. You'll do all the accounting. You'll do all the maintenance calls. It will be a lot of hard work. But having done it for my parents, and, I'd always thought about, essentially I worked for myself in that capacity, and I figured it would be very similar, which it was. 14, 16-hour days. Eventually I was able to hire a bookkeeper and some other people to help me. And, we've grown a lot since then. I have 8 people. We're hiring 2 more. We have an accounting department. We have a research department. It's grown exponentially since we started, and we just celebrated our 3-year anniversary.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you very much.
Are your clients all from the Fresno area, or are you greater, like in California, or are we talking just the Valley?
One of the things I wanted to do, having worked for a bigger company that was spread out, was I really wanted to laser focus on Fresno. And one of the reasons I wanted to do that is I think living in New York, it made me really appreciate urban environments. And there is a scalability of being in an urban environment. You're close to your clients. There's a lot of opportunities. Know your territory or the area in which you're trying to work extremely well. And so that was really a business model we adopted really early, is let's become the masters of Fresno. Let's figure out everything that's going on and really try to work this area, Fresno and Clovis. There are so many people here. There are so many things going on. And, like I said before, you can really get pulled in a lot of directions. And so I didn't want that to happen to us. And, slowly our territory is expanding, but our focus remains Fresno and Clovis.
So how did you decide to be in downtown Fresno? Because you could have been anywhere else, and then, up north has some beautiful complexes as well.
Yeah.
But all of a sudden on my walk, there it is, Boese property, and I thought, interesting that, this, because it looks like you have a lot of people working in there too.
Yeah. So when we got our start, we were fortunate enough to get office at a really affordable rate, and affordable meaning free. And so that was terrific. We were on Shaw Avenue near Pardini's for your listeners. And Shaw Avenue and Van Ness, and it was terrific. It was in the back of an office park. It was hard to find, but it was a beautiful office, and it was comfortable, 1,500 square feet. And once we reached around 5 or 6 people, it became very cramped. We were comfortable, but one of the things I noticed was, because of the layout of this town, it's hard to get anywhere if you're on that part of Shaw Avenue. And it was convenient to me because I lived in Old Fig, and I continue to live in Old Fig, and we enjoy it over there. But downtown always appealed to me, because if you're downtown, you can get anywhere relatively quickly. And so, my commute's the same from Old Fig to my office downtown on Kernell, as it was on Shaw and Van Ness, which is peculiar because a lot of people assume that the commute would be much shorter to Shaw Avenue. So when the opportunity came up to meet Will Dyke, I went to lunch with him to get to know him as a developer here in town.
And he's the owner of the building you're in?
The Virginia Hotel, yes, he is. And he had just purchased it from the bank, and he wanted to talk to me about, leasing it. And so he took me through the first floor and some of the other spaces that were available, and he was telling me, I'm almost done with the bank process. I have these spaces, I'd like to get them leased out immediately. And once I saw the space on the first floor, being a New Yorker, I always liked retail spaces for office, big wide open spaces, tall ceilings, lots of glass, always reminded me of that sort of that New York feeling. And once I saw it, the wheels started turning right away. And I thought about the next phase of my business. And really the business needed to grow up. It was kind of like we were in our parents' basement. We were getting free rent, right? It was very comfortable. It was easy, but, it was getting tight. And so really going out and leasing a space in the downtown corridor, right in the middle of where all the new action is happening. So we have, Fulton Mall coming in, high-speed rail, a couple blocks over. A lot of interesting things happening and a lot of interest in downtown. And so when I saw the space, it made sense to me immediately. And so, Will and I were able to figure out a lease probably in about 3 or 4 hours, and we had it signed maybe about 3 days later.
And so you're there now.
Yeah.
Commercial property. We've talked on the show, and we've had Mr. Assimi on this program before. We've had guests talking about the housing market, but never someone to tell us about commercial property. How is the market in Fresno for commercial property? And the reason I ask the question is there are a lot of vacancies, but then there are a lot of people moving in as well.
Right. And I think that has to do with there's a lot of inventory, right? And I think there is a lot of activity. It really depends. It depends what you're looking at. I think there's a significant amount of office space in downtown Fresno. And, if you're a renter, you have really your pick. And, people are offering different incentives and things like that. I think as the market picks up, we're going to see a lot of these buildings fixed up, and we're going to see a lot of people move from other parts of Fresno to downtown as sort of the incentives continue to do that. So I think there's a lot of upside, but there's still a lot of vacancies, and I think a lot of the properties need a little bit of attention. And sort of that was one of the reasons I wanted to move downtown, is that there's a lot of great brokers in this town, but they're all spread out, right? And a lot of them are north of Shaw Avenue, and a lot of them are north of Herndon. And that really isn't their area of expertise. And I thought, okay, downtown Fresno, there's a lot of things happening here. There's a lot of upside. People are positive about it. There's a lot of movement, but you have to be there to really experience it. And that was one of the motivations for being down here, is to understand the market. You have to be here. And so that's one of the main reasons we're here.
When someone is thinking about renting a house or buying a house, my advice is try to buy it if you can, because, and we still may be in that situation where your rents and your mortgage are about even. You're the expert, so am I correct in that?
Well, it's a difficult thing when we're talking about commercial real estate.
And that's where I'm going. So if someone came to me and asked me, should I rent a commercial property or buy a commercial property, I'm not going to have an answer because I don't know anything about that industry.
Sure. And I always tell people, if you have the financial wherewithal to own a commercial property and it makes sense for you, and you're working with people who know what they're doing, whether it's myself, another broker, or you have a good team of CPAs or attorneys to help you through the process, because it is complicated. The benefits on the tax side and not paying rent and possibly earning the income on leasing to other people is really significant. And you see a lot of people, Mr. Trump being one of them, and a lot of other famous developers really generate wealth through commercial real estate. And a lot of that is done on the backside, as on the tax side, that a lot of people don't see. There's a lot of tax benefits to owning commercial real estate, and there's a lot of incentives, SBA loans, where you would only show up with 10% down on a commercial real estate project if you occupied it. I think about half of it on your own. So the answer to that is, if you can do it, probably. If you're going to lease, make sure you know what you're getting into. Make sure you have somebody to help you with that lease, and so you know the terms and conditions of that lease. If you have options to renew, what happens when your lease comes to expiry. And there's a lot of good real estate professionals that can help you with that process here in town. But to answer your question, always try to own it if you can.
And tell us a little bit about what you look for when you look for a commercial property. And the reason I ask is, we know if you're going to buy a home, the school district, the area, the reputation. Commercial property, what am I looking for if I wanted to go up and buy a commercial property?
Well, you really want to think about what it is you're trying to accomplish. There's a couple things you can do. You're trying to acquire a property for appreciation. You're hoping that it'll gain value over time, as a piece of real estate. If you're looking to generate revenue on leases and rent, we look at cap rates, and that's the rate of return you have on a piece of property after you subtract all the expenses. What do you take home at the end of the day? We give a lot of guidance on that end. So it really depends what you're looking to get out of it. Are you looking for a place to house your business to achieve those significant savings instead of rent, and hopefully, get those tax advantages? So it really depends. It starts with a conversation about what it is that you're trying to do. And every client that we engage with, their objectives are going to be different. So that's where it starts, finding out what it is you're trying to do. And for some people, it's not always right.
How do I know if I'm paying too much for a commercial property? For a residential property, you do the appraisal, you have other ways.
Yeah.
Commercial property, it's not that easy, is it?
No, commercial property is very mysterious in that way. And that's one of the things that I like about it, is that there's a lot of homework and detective work that you need to do. I really think that engaging with a commercial real estate professional is the best place to start. And that's a subjective question. How much is too much? And I think the value is going to be different for everybody. And again, it goes back to what are your objectives? And paying too much really depends on if you're looking to get a certain rate of return. And that'll be done as a function of rate of return, a percentage. And typically, most good returns are 7% and higher. But as we see less good properties being available, that rate of return is actually dropping into 5 and 6% return. And those aren't really the best investments, because you're going to acquire a certain amount of risk owning real estate. And there's all those hidden things of maintenance, right? The undependability of tenants, right? Interest rates could go up, a lot of things. But the market for Fresno right now is very good. So is it a buyer's or seller's market? It's a little bit of both. And there's a shortage of good properties available. There are a significant amount of vacancies. So it's a mixed bag. But I'm positive for 2017, and cautiously optimistic is the best way to put it.
Some people think that we're in another balloon, or prices are creeping up a little too high.
Yeah.
Do you have any advice on that?
Yeah, I think that it really is the top of a market, and things are priced pretty aggressively right now, and so it's difficult to find a good value. So that's a function of money being really cheap. It's easy to get commercial loans at attractive rates right now, and so the balloon is a function of interest rates being really low for an extended period of time. It'd be interesting to see what the next year or two brings. But if interest rates continue to go up and the availability of getting loans on commercial real estate becomes harder, then you'll see prices being pushed down. But for right now, things continue to grow, and commercial real estate continues to be priced aggressively.
We saw a lot of out-of-town investors buying up properties when things were low around here. Are we still seeing that same level of out-of-town investment?
I agree 100%. Yeah, we're seeing a lot of good out-of-town investors, and I think that's especially good for Fresno to have investment dollars from other markets flooding in. And we get calls from obviously other parts of California, the Bay Area, San Diego, Orange County, LA. We get calls from Chicago and New York. I still have a good network of investors from the New York area, and those investors from everywhere, including investors from abroad, Hong Kong, the Middle East. Fresno is known for its cheap real estate, and we were just talking about things being expensive, but that's all relative. If you go into these other markets, picking up an office building for less than $1 million for some of these guys in other markets like New York and Chicago, it's outrageous to them. And so we joke in our industry that these guys find the money for these buildings in their couch, right? And so they pick them up as value investments. We do a lot of business in that area because if they're not from the U.S., if they're on a different coast, we'll help manage that property. And that's a key component for investors in other markets. Even if they're in the Bay Area, they're not going to operate the property on a day-to-day basis. The demands of tenants would be too great. And so we do a lot of business in that area where, we'll have somebody that will see a property that we advertise and they'll say, hey, this is a really good investment for us for our portfolio. Can you help us manage and lease it? Yeah, sure we can. And off we go. And for the most part, most of our portfolio is fully leased. And we have a lot of good success where we manage, lease, and either acquire or dispose the property from top to bottom. And those are the projects we like.
We are running out of time this week on the program, believe it or not. I can talk to you for several other shows. What is your goal of this company? I mean, and the reason I ask you that question is because I think it's interesting. You were doing well in New York, then things get tough, economy hits, you hit bottom, come to Fresno, things are looking good, things are going good, and then all of a sudden, something happens and things get a little rocky, and now it seems like you're on the uphill drive. Yeah. What's your goal for the company?
So, really the story of our company is we're growing quickly. My objectives for the company are to work on really great projects. When I started the company, I think I wanted to take over the world, right? I wanted all the properties, for sale and under management. And then I realized, we wanted to work with good people on good projects, and it made much more sense to work on those projects than to run around like crazy. And for our company, it grew really fast. And, I also realized that I wanted to work with good people internally. And really the day-to-day, working with the people that we have on our team makes it worthwhile. So really good clients, really good team members, that's really the goal. And if we keep working on good projects with good people and keep them profitable, we'll continue to grow in the right way.
How can people get a hold of you? How can they ask you questions if things are interesting to them?
Sure. And one of the reasons we moved to downtown is people can find us very easily. So we're located in the Virginia Hotel, Kernan L Street. People can stop by Monday through Friday and speak to one of us in the office, or call us and make an appointment at 559-369-2750, or they can visit us on the web, www.bcfresno.com.
Thank you so much. Rob Boese, correct? Did I get that right this
time? You got it right.
I got it right. Yeah. Took me a while, but I got it right. Thank you for coming on the program.
I really appreciate being here. Thank you for having me.
That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Thank you to the volunteer crew that make this production and every production possible. We couldn't do this program without you. Thank you to our guest, Rob Boese. He's in the commercial property. Today he was talking about commercial property, but he does a lot of things with property. Thank you to those watching on Comcast 93 and AT&T 99. That's all for this edition of the Central Valley Ledger. Tune in next week to a new edition.
KFSR and CMAC present the Central Valley Ledger every Sunday morning at 11:30. For a complete program schedule, visit kfsr.org.